For 6,000 years, a single element has held a spell over humanity. It's built empires, and it has torn them down. It has been worshipped as a symbol of the gods, and it's been the driving force behind our deepest obsessions. This is the story of a substance born in the heart of dying stars, a substance that somehow speaks to the very core of what it means to be human.
You know, Warren Buffett just nails the central paradox of gold with this quote. When you really stop and think about it, our behavior around this shiny metal seems, well, completely bonkers. We pour unbelievable amounts of energy into ripping it out of the ground, only to lock it away in a vault, another hole in the ground. And yet, this seemingly useless element is the bedrock of our concept of value.
So that's the big question, isn't it? Why? What is it about gold that has so completely captured the human imagination for millennia? For those of you who are new here, a big welcome. On this channel, we dig into the psychology behind finance, the why that drives our decisions. And today, we're not just looking at a metal. We're looking in the mirror.
Okay, so to really understand our deep psychological bond with gold, we have to go back to the very beginning. And I mean the very beginning. Its story doesn't start on Earth. It starts with some of the most violent and spectacular fireworks the universe has to offer. Let this sink in for a second. Every single atom of gold on this planet is alien. It was forged in the unimaginable furnace of colliding neutron stars and then flung across the cosmos. That stardust eventually became part of the cloud that formed Earth, and because it's so heavy, most of it sank right to our planet's molten core. It was only through intense volcanic action that tiny traces of it were pushed up into the crust for us to find. So its rarity isn't just geological, it's cosmological.
And here's where the psychology kicks in. When our ancestors first found gold, it was often in these beautiful, intricate, crystalline shapes, almost like a fern. They didn't see a dead mineral, they saw something that was alive, something that literally grew inside the rock. They believed you couldn't just take it all or it wouldn't grow back. You had to leave a little seed behind. So from the very start, gold wasn't just a resource, it was a living thing. What's absolutely wild is how cultures all over the world, completely isolated from each other, somehow came to the same exact conclusion. For the Incas in South America, gold was literally the tears of the sun. For the ancient Egyptians, it was the flesh of the gods. You see the pattern? It wasn't just pretty, it wasn't just rare, it was divine. It was a physical piece of the cosmos right here on Earth.
So how did this divine, cosmic metal get tangled up with our deepest, most human desire, the need to overcome death itself? This is where gold transforms from a sacred substance into the ultimate symbol of the eternal.
Gold just happens to have this unique set of physical traits that make it the perfect metaphor for immortality. It doesn't rust, it doesn't tarnish, it never corrodes. Its shine, its luster, it's constant. You could pull a gold coin from a 2,000-year-old shipwreck, and it would shine just as brightly as the day it was made. In a world where everything else rots and decays, food, buildings, our own bodies, gold was the one thing that seemed to beat time. It was eternal. And there's no better example of this than the tomb of King Tutankhamun. I mean, look at this mask. This wasn't just an over-the-top display of wealth. To the Egyptians, this was critical technology. By wrapping the pharaoh in the flesh of the gods, they believed they were literally ensuring his rebirth, turning him from a mortal king into an immortal god. The gold wasn't to show his status in life, it was to guarantee his power in the next.
And the sheer scale of this belief is just mind-blowing. Tutankhamun's mummy was laid to rest inside an inner coffin, a sarcophagus made from 110 kilograms of solid gold. That is almost 250 pounds. This wasn't just a fancy burial, it was a profound psychological statement against the void. It was a bid for permanence.
But, and this is a really crucial point, gold's ultimate value is a powerful idea, not a universal fact. In many parts of the ancient Americas, things like brilliant greenstone or intricately woven textiles were considered way more precious. In imperial China, it was jade, not gold, that symbolized true status and virtue. This just proves that value is a psychological agreement. It's a story we all collectively decide to believe in.
Okay, so how did gold make the jump from being this powerful divine symbol to being the foundation of our entire economic world? Well, it turns out it solved one of the very first and most stressful problems of civilization. Think about it. If you're in an early agricultural society like Mesopotamia, your wealth is your harvest. But grain spoils, it attracts pests, it's incredibly heavy and hard to transport. This created a huge amount of what you could call trade anxiety. How could you possibly trade the value of your hard work for something that would actually last?
And that's where gold came in. Around 2500 BC, people started using it as a reliable way to trade. Why? Because it was durable, it was easy to carry, and you could divide it up. It didn't rot. This was a massive step in soothing the economic anxieties of the ancient world. But the real game changer? That came much, much later.
This right here is one of the first coins ever made. It was minted in Lydia, which is in modern-day Turkey, around 560 BC. The king, a guy named Croesus, started stamping these little lumps of gold with his official seal. That stamp was a guarantee of the weight and the purity. And that small act was a massive psychological leap. Gold was no longer just a precious metal, it was now money. Its value is standardized and backed by the government.
Honestly, this shift is everything. It's the moment our idea of wealth became abstract and scalable. Trust moved from the physical metal itself to the authority that guaranteed it. This is the absolute foundation of all modern finance. And hey, if you find these kinds of deep dives into the psychology of our world as fascinating as I do, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what's coming next.
But the story doesn't just stop in the ancient world. Not at all. The deep psychological forces that gave gold its power in the first place, that desire for security, for status, for permanence, they are absolutely still with us today, echoing all around us. We all know the myth of King Midas. We usually hear it as a simple story about greed, but if you look at it psychologically, it's a brilliant cautionary tale about confusing the symbol of wealth with life itself. Midas gets his ultimate wish, but he ends up starving and alone, unable to eat, drink, or even hug his own daughter. It's a timeless warning about the dark side of this obsession.
And that obsession has driven us to some truly insane feats of engineering. The Romans developed a technique called ruina montium, which literally means the wrecking of mountains. They would build miles of aqueducts just to channel huge volumes of water and then unleash it to blast away entire mountainsides, all to get at the veins of gold inside. It was basically a war on the landscape, fueled by an unquenchable thirst for power.
And get this, the mining technology the Romans invented was so advanced and so efficient that it remained the state-of-the-art for over 1,000 years. Just think about that. It shows you how absolutely central getting gold was to building an empire, and how our drive for it has literally reshaped the face of the planet.
And even today, just listen to our language. It's saturated with gold's ancient divine meaning. We talk about a golden age, the peak of perfection. We're told to follow the golden rule, the highest moral code. We celebrate a golden anniversary and look forward to our golden years. Deep in our subconscious, gold still means perfect, best, and everlasting.
Which brings us to one last really big idea to leave you with. We like to think of our financial system as this cold, rational machine of numbers and rules. But what if it's not? What if, underneath all the spreadsheets and stock tickers, our entire concept of wealth and savings is still powered by that same ancient urge that drove the pharaohs, that deep, primal desire to build something that will outlast us, a modern-day quest for a different kind of immortality?